Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of The Charles Kovess Show, episode 183, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening via one of the many podcast platforms. Our format for the show is that I share today's big idea with you. I share 6 resources that will help you implement today's big idea, review some key happenings over the past week, and then the foundational principles for the show and more details about my background are at the end of the show for newer viewers and listeners. Experienced viewers and listeners already know that stuff, so they don't have to go to that last bit. So let's get with today's big idea. You and I are human beings, men and women. I reject gender theory. I reject woke principles. I reject political correctness. As men and women, we have a range of inalienable rights in Australia, where I live, in the USA, in the UK, in Canada. These rights also apply in a number of other countries whose foundations are based on the English common law system. That common law system and the inalienable rights that I'm talking about originated with the first Magna Carta in 2015. That was 807 years ago. There's been 807 years of development of the rights that we have as men and women, our inalienable rights. These rights and more were articulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in December 1948. And there was a very distinguished group of men and women who put those words together that were then adopted by the General Assembly. I want to highlight key points of this Universal Declaration so that you more deeply appreciate your rights, you more deeply know your rights, and therefore so that you more clearly know when it is appropriate for you to fight for those rights. If you don't fight for these rights, you will lose them. So now I want to extract some key points from the official document itself. The Universal Declaration starts with a preamble, and I'm going to read this because they're very powerful words. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law, whereas it's essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations, whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom, whereas member states, and I note that state means a country, whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United Nations, the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms, whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge, Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of member states themselves and among the peoples of territories under their jurisdiction. So this is the territories under the jurisdiction of these member states. There are 30 articles. I'm going to mention a number of them. Article 1. I'm not going to get all of the words. I don't want this to be too long, but they're very powerful. I'm going to get you extracts from key articles. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty. Liberty is another word for freedom. And the security of person. That means that you can't have imposed on you actions by governments that are unlawful. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. And I'll make a comment that Rainer Fulmich, German and US attorney, is in a German prison now being tortured contrary to this declaration. Article 7. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. And note the discrimination that has happened to those who refused to take a bioweapon, who insisted on their rights under the Nuremberg Declaration to not have a medical intervention. Article 9. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Article 12. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy. That includes my body, your body, family, home, or correspondence. In other words, you can't have arbitrary interference in your communications with other people, nor to attacks upon his honour and reputation. And look at the attacks on people's honour and reputation because they did not agree with what the government was wanting to impose. Article 13. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. That means the country you live in. 2, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. In other words, in Australia, the banning of people coming in and citizens coming back to their own country was a breach of this Declaration of Human Rights. It makes my blood boil. Article 16, there are 3 parts of it. The third part, number 3, the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. I say the family is being attacked left, right and centre, particularly in leftist governments that operate in Australia and particularly in the state of Victoria where I live. Article 17, everyone has the right to own property alone, as well as in association with others. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. And remember the mantra of the Great Reset, you will own nothing and you will be happy. I reject that. That's the Great Reset promoted by the World Economic Forum that's meeting next week in Davos, and their mantra is rebuilding trust. What a corrupt, criminal band of thieves who want to take away Article 17, your right to own property. Article 18, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. And that includes my thoughts on the topics that I share with you and your thoughts on whatever you want to talk about. And I point out that that YouTube continues to censor unlawfully, immorally, unethically. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Article 20. Two parts to this. Number one, everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. Two, no one may be compelled to belong to an association. Article 21. Part 3. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. In other words, government gets its power from the people, not vice versa. The people are sovereign, not the government. Article 23. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favourable conditions of work. And look what happened over the last 4 years about this alleged right to work. Article 28. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realised. And then Article 30. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, that means country, Australia, group or person, any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth in this Universal Declaration. It's a powerful statement. Get a copy of it off the internet. If you want me to email you a copy, I'll be happy to do so. I urge you to embrace this declaration, to read it more than once. And I urge you to reject dictatorship, to reject totalitarianism, to reject any proroguing of your parliament so that proper debate between government and opposition is banned. I urge you to reject fascism. I urge you to reject communism. You are entitled to be free. You are entitled to your inalienable rights. I hope this show reminds you of what these rights are. I want you to bring them to the attention of your local representatives. They are your servants. They are not your masters. The people are sovereign, not the ministers of government, not the elected representatives. They are simply representatives of where the true power lies. Now let's check some resources, the 6 resources that might help you to implement this idea. The song is by Johnny Cash, great song, Man in Black. And he explains why he dresses in black. It's a pretty powerful song. And he says, I wear the black for the poor and the beaten down, live in the hopeless, hungry side of town. I wear it for the prisoner who has long paid for his crime. I wear the black for those who've never read or listened to the words that Jesus said about the road to happiness through love and charity. Why? You'd think he's talking straight to you and me. I wear it for the sick and lonely old. It's a powerful song about people whose freedoms are taken away, whose rights are taken away, and we who are capable need to fight for those. Now, that doesn't mean that those who then, there are people who need help, and I'm all in favour of helping people who need help. I am opposed to governments wasting money on people who just want to live off your hard work and who can't be bothered. My book this week is by John Roscombe and Chris Berg, published by the Institute of Public Affairs, the Magna Carta. It's a wonderful, not particularly thick book on the tax revolt that gave us liberty. Here we are talking about liberty. My quote is from Nelson Mandela. Wonderful man. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Just understand that. To deny your human rights is to deny your humanity. Understand how powerful that is and get angry when someone wants to take away your rights. I certainly do. And if you don't know what your rights are, you won't get angry enough. My spiritual tip is to watch my show from last week that was lifted from YouTube because they censored it, and it's available on Rumble. It's on Archbishop Vigano. It's a very powerful statement that's had over 80,000 views. Please have a look at it. It's a powerful message about the spiritual war that we are in right now. My health tip is to remind you about the value of hyperbaric, which is just oxygen under double atmospheric pressure, not play stuff, but double atmospheric pressure and breathing 100% oxygen. That regime, in simple terms, it increases the production of your stem cells by 800%. And stem cells are the key element to your body healing itself in any space. Secondly, if you look on Google, search cancer and hypoxia is lack of oxygen. Cancer and lack of oxygen, cancer and hypoxia, there will be 13 million plus references. Cancer thrives in a low oxygen environment. And a quick spot of humor, because we've got a lot of content. And since we're talking about rights and freedoms, a prisoner finally gets out of jail, and he's led out the front gates and he says, I'm free. And a little kid hears him and says, that's nothing, mate. I'm 5. So take the steps in today's big idea to reacquaint yourself about your inalienable rights so you are able to live life on your terms. And then those terms include raising your self-awareness about what you're passionate about and living a life that is nourishing and fulfilling and has meaning for you. That's what lies at the heart of this program. And if you want help on increasing your self-awareness, discovering your passion, check out charlescovest.com, my website. Get in touch. We'll do one-on-one 5 sessions of coaching that will transform your life. I invite you to subscribe to this show if you're not yet a subscriber. Share it with your family and friends, with your work colleagues. You can discover more about my public programs and corporate programs at covest.com, and charlescovest.com has a lot of material. My books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, are both available on those websites. Now let's review some key happenings over the past week. My TNT radio program, my weekly TNT radio program that is on at 7 p.m. Sunday nights. The beauty of TNT radio, which you can hear online at tntradio.live, is that every show is recorded. And tonight's show is the 2nd anniversary. The first show I did for the Mind Medicine program was the 15th of January 2022. So how's that? 2 years goes pretty quickly. My guest is Tanya de Jong, the co-founder of Mind Medicine Australia. I also urge you to go back and review other guests that I've had. And over the last 2 weeks, I've had Keith Bulfin, an expert in child trafficking, and Ian Brighthope, an expert in vitamin C and alternative health. If you haven't listened to those programs, please, I urge you to do so, and others that are of value, including Dr. Paul Oosterhouse, some amazing guests I've had over the last 2 years. This morning I rode my bike on a 40-kilometre bike ride for Bring Them Home Now, a ride in solidarity with the Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. So there's quite a big crowd of cyclists on the 100th day of October, the 100 days after the October 7 atrocity. Now, what do you think about Israel, Gaza? I want to give you a quick framework to help you think about it. I'm not an expert on the matter. Very few people are experts. And even if you are an expert, these are complex geopolitical matters. Okay, and so what we have in Australia and other places is orchestrated demonstrations by people in support of Palestinians. And the Jewish people, the Israelis who were attacked, over 2,000 of them slaughtered, hostages taken. People say, oh, well, you're entitled to be attacked and you should not retaliate. Now, what do we think about all of that? How do you think about that? Well, I'm not in favour of slaughtering anybody. They are men and women in Palestine. They are men and women in Israel. I say that Israel is entitled to retaliate against Hamas. Hamas is being funded by Iran. Iran wants to create chaos. The Palestinians and Iran want to eliminate all Jews in Israel. The United Nations, the countries on the planet orchestrated that Israel be established in 1948. Hamas is a terrorist organization. The issue, what you think about all these complex issues, you have to do your own thinking, but be aware that the fact that people in Australia and other countries are demonstrating, they're looking to create misinformation, much misinformation, and it is funded by people. These demonstrations, these organisers of these demonstrations are being well funded by people who want to cause conflict between men and women. And you start to go, I wonder why they want to do that. And there's a wonderful video available on the internet called All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. There's big geopolitical issues around this. Israel is entitled to protect itself, and anyone who is attacked is entitled to protect themselves. Douglas Murray, wonderful UK commentator, he says, no one wants the Palestinians who are living in Gaza. All the Arab nations surrounding Israel, they don't want the Palestinians. Very interesting. All very complex. And my observation is, I do this myself, I don't get sucked into one side or the other. I do say every person is entitled to defend themselves. You are entitled to defend yourself against attack by your own government, which is certainly what's happened in Australia, USA, UK, Canada, and many other nations. And the last matter I want to raise is a major Australian supermarket chain, two Australian supermarket chains, Woolworths and Aldi, are not stocking Australia Day commemorative materials. And this is another political statement by big business. And just observe, it is, I've made a decision. Woolworths is a company of bad intent. Aldi, I'm surprised it made that decision. I'm in support of Australia Day. I'm in support of the culture in this country. I oppose anyone who wants to destroy the culture in this country. All right. If you're new to the show, stick around. I'll go through the foundational principles for the show and more background about me. Have a great week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Increase your self-awareness. Discover your passion. Come and do some coaching with me if you can't do that. If you've got people who work for you who aren't clear on what their lives are about, send them to me. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show, here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Covess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the color of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@covest.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.